All right.
Hi, YouTube.
There you go. All right, we're going to continue with our lessons. Does anybody know or remember the name of our new series that we started a couple weeks ago? Anybody? No. It's the crucified life.
Yeah.
Just a real quick review since we haven't had a lesson in one day. We talked about how Jesus himself defined the crucified life. He said, "I and the Father are one." He also said, I say to you, I do not speak on my own initiative, but the Father abiding in me does his works. Believe me that, here we go, I am in the Father and the Father in me. The majority of the obvious verses, these two passages are from the Gospel of John, Gospel according to John. And the more obvious verses and passages are in the Gospel according to John, but it is actually throughout the whole entire scriptures. We see this. When I was in Bible school, and I started reading, actually it was before I was in Bible school, it was actually in a passage with Isaiah where they got my attention along these lines. And I thought, think about this, look at this. I and the Father are one. And I know I've shared this with you guys, but growing up in elementary school, we are taught that 1 and 1 equals
3.
You failed math. So I had 2. Yes, 1 and 1 equals 2. And yet here's Jesus redefining. He's not redefining. Man tries to redefine everything that God has already defined in his Son. In the Old Testament, it says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord thy God is one." Hear Jesus, I and my Father are one. And so with a natural mind, man comes along with a natural mind trying to figure that out. Okay, so what does he mean? He must mean that they're in agreement together, and they come out with, definitions, redefining things according to what they think with a natural mind. And what makes sense, right? Oh, they must be in agreement together. Well, it's more than that. Remember, there's what is above and there's what's below, and the eternal cross separates the two. Everything below is our natural mind. My natural mind is no different than your natural mind, no different than your natural mind, no different than your natural mind. It's the same mind, the mind of the first man, Adam. Now, different ones of us have developed our natural minds more than others. Different ones of us have learned more, get this, stuff with our natural minds more than others, but it's still the same mind. And it's bound to everything below. It's the mind that processes everything we see with a natural eye, hear with a natural ear, feel, taste, touch. It's all natural senses, all right? So God defines things, all things in his Son, and man tries to redefine what God has already defined. I can't remember if we covered this our previous lesson. We covered a lot of ground our previous lesson. Yeah, we're going to go over it anyway because it's actually over here. All right. Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. All right. And in this creation, he creates one man, right? The first man, Adam. He gives that man complete dominion, rule over the entire creation. Not only that, it says in the scriptures that everything came to Adam to receive Adam's definition. All right, what do I mean by that? Here's just a basic example. Adam named everything in the entire creation. Basically, Adam defined everything of that creation. If you can look at it this way, Adam is the Lord of that creation. I mean, he has all authority in that creation. And so, let's say an elephant comes over to Adam and says, hey, I think I'm a dog. Adam says, I don't care what you think, you're an elephant. Boom. Adam defined what that animal was, what that being was. Everything received its definition from Adam. All right, that's just a testimony. Nowadays, well, that's a testimony of this new creation, who Christ is. And the man of this new creation is Jesus himself, the risen Lord over his creation. Everything's been given to the Son. Adam was just a testimony. He was like a picture, like a picture, a testimony, a foreshadowing, like my shadow right here. You guys see my shadow of my hand? Mm-hmm. Look on the table, right? Yeah, you see my shadow. All right. So my shadow does everything that I do, right? It's a pretty good, yes. It's a pretty good representation, but my shadow is not me. That's basically what Adam was. All right. And so even like to this day, everything that God has created must receive God's definition. And what I mean by that is like, I don't know if you guys have ever had these thoughts or not. I did before I was born again. It's like, you start thinking at some point, you start thinking about something greater than just what's going on down here on the earth. You're like, man, why was I born? What's it all about? Is this it? Or is there something greater? Is there something more to it than just this? And yes, there is something greater. There is something more. But what man does, he comes along and, he does his best. He tries to define what that greater is, what that more is. Oh, yes, you're going to, you were born because, blah, 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 and you're supposed to be an outstanding citizen of the community, or you were born for, get this, greatness, like now you've got your role models. Yeah, Alexander the Great, conquer the world, go do it, go be a millionaire, go be a trillionaire, whatever, He who has the most toys wins, type stuff. You get different definitions of why you exist. But all those definitions come from man with a natural mind. Where God, on the other hand, who created us, he knows why we exist. He created us for a purpose. Each one of us. We weren't just created to be created. We don't have natural life just to have natural life. It's like, okay, now I'm going to go through this whole world. I'm going to be a kid. I'm going to get older, and I'm going to be then I'm going to get old and die, and that was it. I did the deal. No. No, God created each soul for his own purpose, for his Son, actually, for that Son to receive life and life abundantly. All right? In the garden, once again. But like what I was saying, we get our definitions from man, but we never go to God himself. I don't know why. I mean, I guess it's just in us like Adam. It's like, here's the garden, right? The Garden of Eden. God says, you can eat of anything if you want in the garden, all the trees. Just don't eat of this one tree over here, that's the tree of death. But there was another tree as well, called the tree of life, which represents Jesus himself, the life of God. And so what does man do? What does Adam do? Totally neglects the tree of life and goes to the tree of death. That's what we do. Back to the example. Trying to find our reason for being. It's in every generation, in every kid. And if you don't have those thoughts, well, you're just caught up in something, that at some point you may get shaken from that something, whatever it is. All right. And so back to the example. We don't go to God to receive his purpose for creating us, like the reason why we exist or anything. We go to the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, the tree that natural man feeds on, and get this, very sadly, that believers feed on to. How do they do it? The heart submitted to the natural mind, the mind of the first man, Adam, the mind of Pharaoh. And Pharaoh isn't even there. Back to the testimony, because I've got glazed eyes, right? Especially your eyes. Yeah, that's right. Start blinking. Come on, come here. Come back down here. All right, back to the testimony. The children of Israel are in Egypt, right? 400 years in Egypt. Yeah, wake up. No, don't be doing that to me. That's weird. That's more weird. Okay, all right. Definitely don't do that. They're in Egypt, right? 400 years. They're slaves. They're in the house of bondage. Pharaoh governs them, right?
Yes.
They believe they can do whatever they want. Oh, Jaden?
Yes.
Thank you, Jaden. You raise your hand. They believe they can do whatever they want, but in reality, they can't. Pharaoh is their ruler. In the scriptures, okay? In the scriptures, Egypt represents dead among the dead. That's what it represents in the scriptures. Pharaoh in the scriptures represents the ruler of the dead, okay? And so here they are in captivity to Pharaoh, and they can't do their own will. Or maybe they think they do their own will, but really they're doing the will of Pharaoh, which is, get this, no different than the mind of the first man, Adam. All right, I didn't know if I was going to show you this time, but I will. All right, real quick. This is a picture of a royalty-free picture. I think it's of King Tutankhamun, one of the pharaohs. You guys see it? I'm going to pass by quick. See it? All right. Look at that. See that? See what's on his forehead? Do you guys see that?
A bird and a cobra.
See it?
Dodo bird.
It's
Looks like
It's
a
a
toucan.
it's a vulture. To me, it looks like a vulture, but there's a serpent on his head. Remember, in antiquity, which I think is the period before the Renaissance, before the Middle Ages, before the Middle Ages, in antiquity, during that time, the serpent represented wisdom. Kind of gets you thinking. So here's Adam and Eve in the garden, and God says, do not eat of this tree of death. I know, he said, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. But we think it's the tree of the knowledge of evil. No, it's the tree of the knowledge of good, what we think is good, and evil, which to God, compared to the tree of life, is death. And so there's this serpent. And so you have Adam and Eve, and God says, eat of anything you want except this. And what do? The very first thing God tells him not to do. So what happens is that Adam was, I wonder. That's not so bad. I think. I wonder. I think. You get it? I. All right? Think about that. I think. I wonder. I know better. That's the natural mind. I know better. Where the mind of Christ, when the heart is submitted to the mind of Christ, you hear this other, like with what the Apostle Paul says, not I, but Christ. All right, so anyway, Man goes to everything. Well, man gravitates towards death. Receives his definition from death, from the serpent, actually. The one who is in control, children of Israel in Egypt. All right. So, man eats of, here we go. Here's God. Well, this is my diagram. It represents God. It's not God. I know that. It's not God. It represents God, but it's for an illustration, all right? So here's God says, let us make man in our own image, right? So in the image of God, he created man. God created man. Do you see anything? Is there anything different? Naomi.
There was only one circle, and the other one there were two.
Sure there were two? Two circles?
One on the inside and one on the outside.
Or is this circle filled and this one not? That's the key. God says, let us make man in our own image. Another thing that I can't remember if I shared this with you guys before, but we're just vessels. That's really what we are. Our soul is a vessel, all right? God created man in his own image as a vessel to be filled with the life of God. See, that was the purpose from the get-go. God creates the living God. Remember, the living God creates this Garden of Eden, places man in it. The Garden of Eden represents like a harmonious relationship with God. That's what it represents. Like everything is the way it should be concerning man and God. That's what the Garden of Eden represents. All right? And so God places this tree of life, and that was the purpose and the intent of God placing man in the Garden of Eden, that man would at some point eat from the tree of life and receive life. God is the living one. Man is not. Yeah, he was a living soul, but he did not have life because remember, he never ate of the tree of life. So there's a soul that was created in the image of God, totally different, not God, but was created like a vessel to receive the life of God, the tree of life. All right? Instead, we know that man ate of the tree of death, and now he got filled with something. The condition changed. Does that look what?
Is that Arkansas?
It looks like Arkansas.
That's messed up.
Look, it's Arkansas.
Okay.
Look, you even have the little. It's literally.
Okay, it's not supposed to represent any
It looks
state,
like Arkansas.
whatever. It represents no state whatsoever. What it
So
represents,
you're saying Arkansas is
no,
sinners?
no.
Arkansas's death.
No. It represents a corrupted state, a corrupted condition. Because God made man in his own image. Man was purposed of God to eat from the tree of life so that he would be filled with life. We know he ate from the tree of death because God said, when you eat of that tree, you're going to die. And compared to the tree of life, see, that's the thing. Our comparisons are, oh, well, this is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and this is the tree of not so much knowledge. No. The comparison, man always makes the comparison of something less than Christ. God doesn't. God says, here's the tree of life, and here's the tree of death. If it's not life, it is death. And God says, don't eat from this tree, because I created you to receive life. So he eats from the tree, the condition of his soul changed, right? The image changed, boom. And now he's filled. It's just not life. And see, it used to be a perfect square. And I was like, no, it's not even anything perfect. It's all messed up. It's a jacked up square. It's a messed up square. It's kind of like messed with pointies on it, you know? No. reference to no state whatsoever. Leave that one over there.
Reference
Going
state.
going on with the lesson. We are with not a geographical lesson, but a scriptural, biblical lesson. Okay. So, does this shape equal this?
No.
No, that's obvious, right?
Arkansas is not a circle.
No. No.
Just let it be. Let
Let
Jimmy
it-
have
yes.
his example.
Yes. Just go with the example. No. Does not equal. All right. So man enters into this state, this condition, not only as a state, but remember, it was also his mind, right? Had Adam continued, and get this, had Adam continued and been obedient to God, he would have been obedient to the mind of God. But he wasn't. He was obedient to the mind of the serpent, the mind of the first man, Adam. So that represents the mind of the first man, Adam, which is no different, which is basically governed by the serpent. Remember, Adam didn't do the will of God. Adam did the will of the serpent, right? God says, don't eat of the tree of death. The serpent says, nothing will happen if you eat of this tree. Man says, I wonder. I think you're right. I think. That's the mind. I colored it in. It represents darkness. Death looks nothing like life. Darkness looks nothing like light. There's the mind of the first man, Adam, the natural mind that all of us have. And we say, oh, well, I'm smart, or I've learned, or I went to this school, or I went to that school, I went to this college, I got this degree, I got that degree. And God says, it's compared to the mind of Christ, it's darkness. It's like it doesn't matter how much you've learned. According to God, it's darkness. Because get this, everything that you have learned gravitates toward what God calls death. God and God alone draws our heart out from, get this, out from among the realm of the dead unto life, his son. So this is your mind, my mind, natural mind, darkness. Does it equal the mind of Christ? No. I'll give you an example. Jesus said, he who has the Son, or actually this might have been, I'm not sure if it was, it was Jesus. It was either Jesus or the Apostle John. He who has the Son has the life. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. He also said, I am the resurrection and the life. Has he who believes in me, get this, Jesus says this, he who has believed in me has passed from death unto life. And so God's definition of life for a person, for a soul, is a soul that has received Christ. That's God's definition. If I am alive, it's because Christ is in my soul. That's God's definition. God looks at a soul and says, this soul is alive, this soul is not alive. Man, with our natural mind, doesn't look at the soul, cannot see the soul. He only sees the outward tent and says, do they have a heartbeat? Right? They have a heartbeat. Are they cognizant? Can they use their brain? Yeah, they have brain function. 1 + 1, 2. Yes. And then that person, get this, that person Hopefully it's a well-educated person, right? A degreed person will say, well, actually anyone can say, that person has life. But in the mind of God, if they have not received Christ, if their soul has not undergone new birth, God says they're dead. They need life. All right? Back to the testimony. The children of Israel in Egypt, dead among the dead. The ruler was Pharaoh, serpent on his forehead, the mind of the serpent ruled by that, and God delivers them, but his deliverance is specifically through his son. A testimony of a lamb, right? They ate the lamb. Yes, they had to eat the lamb. Their deliverance from the bondage of death, of sin and death, was the lamb. They ate the lamb. Their deliverance was now in them. Their salvation was now in them. Get this, life was now in them. And that was their deliverance. That was their salvation. Now, nothing changed. That's how God sees it. That's the testimony. It's like any person who's born in the flesh, like every single one of us, me, I'll use myself as an example. When I was born, such and such date, such and such year, I was born, and the doctor, well, I don't know if they still do it nowadays, the doctor picks you up and slaps the baby to make sure he cries, get all this stuff out of the mouth, and yeah, he's alive. If you cry, you're alive. He's not turning blue. He's alive. He's alive. Well, no. Alive in a natural sense, but according to God, no. He hasn't received life yet because he hasn't received my son. Remember, God's son is life, the tree of life. All right? And so years pass, age 20, guess what? By a miracle of God, God drew my heart unto life, where I received life. And according to God, that's when I was born. According to God, at that moment, I received life. And from then on, I now had life. The living God, born again, born from above, not born from below of the flesh. The difference from that moment onward, even with the children of Israel, after God had delivered them out from death and bondage, right? The death of the lamb, the death of the firstborn, we covered that our last lesson. God takes, and it's in the scriptures, everything that's dead has to be buried. That's something scriptural, to bury it out of sight. God takes it all, buries it in the Red Sea. These Egyptians you see today, you will see again no more forever. It'll be buried out of your sight. Then we know, according to the testimony, God says, you saw what I did to the Egyptians and how that I what? Anybody? I'm quoting part of a verse. And how that I brought you unto myself. But he just doesn't say unto myself. Upon eagle's wings, resurrection unto myself. So now they had life. They were brought, get this, unto the real, the true Garden of Eden, where they could now commune with God, where they could now speak to God face to face. That's where, in testimony, they had been brought when the Lord brought them out of Egypt. God, the living God, was in them. Their salvation was in them. Remember, you have to go back to the testimony. They ate the lamb. Their salvation was on the inside. Their deliverance was on the inside. Their life was on the inside. Everything of God was present in the person of his Son in them. And because he was in them, because he was present, now they were brought unto God himself. Now that is a hard thing to grasp with our natural mind. Just as the same way Jesus said, I am in the Father, and the Father is in me. And in a different passage, he says, do you not believe me? Do you not believe that I am in the Father, and the Father in me? You can't, that doesn't make, when I looked at that, and when I studied that, or the very first time, several years ago, I thought that makes no sense to my mind. How can the Father be in the Son and the Son be in the Father? That just makes no sense. Here we go. It makes no sense to the natural mind. And it will never make any sense. The closest parable, or the closest example that Jesus gave, was the vine and the branches. And he said this to his disciples, who would, or his apostles, I can't remember what he was calling them at the time, but who would eventually be born again. He said this. Here we go. He said, abide in me as I am abiding in you. That is the crucified life. All right. Back to the testimony, the children of Israel walking around in the wilderness. God had brought them unto himself. That is what you call reality. God had brought them unto himself. God had given them salvation, life. They received that salvation. They received that life. They received that deliverance when they received his gospel, when they received his lamb and ate it. That's how they received. Everything God promised them was now on the inside. All right? But here they are in the wilderness. And just like the testimony declares, the majority of born-again believers have been brought by God himself unto himself, and yet with our hearts, we continue walking around, taking laps in the wilderness. Get this, trying to navigate the wilderness, trying to navigate everything that we see with our natural eyes, everything that we hear with our natural ears, everything we understand with a natural mind. So the natural mind says, God has left us. I don't see him. The mind of Christ declares, I am in the midst. You just don't believe. They didn't walk by faith. They walked by natural sight. And actually, what's the opposite of faith? Naomi?
Doubt.
Doubt? Got a different word?
Disbelief.
Yes. Unbelief, disbelief. Yeah. So what does God do? I mean, I remember when I was in Bible school, and you guys might get this. You probably did this too. I did it when I was a kid. I remember in Bible school, there was this girl who had a little toddler. And I remember there was she went through this little season, a little phase, and she would go around on all fours barking like a dog, claiming that she was a dog. I mean, it was cute. It was cute. But what if she continued that through her teenage years into adulthood? That something's not right, right? That wouldn't be right. That's not right. Now, get this. All the grown-ups, including her parents, knew the truth, regardless of what she knew, regardless of her little, get this, imagination. That's all it was. To the parents, to those who were older, mature, they knew what was real, what was true, but she was playing with her imagination. So with her imagination, she could be anything she wanted to be. And she was a child. Thank God she grew out of it. All right, so here you have the children of Israel in the Egypt, not in Egypt, excuse me, in the wilderness, taking laps in the wilderness. They can believe whatever they want to believe when their heart is submitted to a natural mind. So they look around and say, you know what? God's not here. And God says, they're just ignorant. That's their imagination. I'm present, but they don't see me because they're looking for me with a natural eye. They're looking for me down here below. And so what does God do? He doesn't say, forget you guys. Well, he kind of did once, but he didn't forget them. He sends them a testimony time and time again, testimony after testimony. One of those testimonies was the tabernacle in the wilderness. Like, there's a picture of it over there on the wall, y'all. Do you see it in the middle? Like underneath the high priest, tabernacle in the wilderness?
There's also a picture right there.
Oh yeah, there's a few pictures over there. So here is like a picture, a testimony of God who is in the midst. And so now you have to look at it from a bird's eye view, I guess, a bigger picture. Here is all of Israel, the whole entire body of Israel camping around the tabernacle that represented God being present in the middle, get this, of his body. Now, there were some who, I don't want to say figured it out, there were some who were brought by the Spirit of God where their hearts were now brought above and said, oh my gosh. I mean, this thing, this tabernacle, it's just not here to so we don't like totally lose it and go AWOL, freak out of any kind. No, this is here because God placed it here so we could see and know that there is something greater, that the living God himself is present in the midst, whether we physically, naturally see him or not. And so Moses, he would go up the mountain, right? Up the mountain. He would ascend up the mountain and talk with God. To me, that's like his heart turning above, communing with the Lord. Remember, perfect communion, harmonious relationship with the living God. And then Moses would now come and communicate to the people. Not the mind of Moses, but the mind of God. And time again, God did this for them. Because, well, they were his children. He birthed them, if you will. They were once dead, and God gave them life, and now they were alive. They were once sons of Pharaoh, children of the devil, and now they were children of God. They were his own. In testimony, they were born from above. All right. Going on. Wow. Did I lose anyone? Okay. Jaden's asleep. Or he looks asleep. All right. Disobedient to the one command. We already did talk about that. Like that. Yeah. Yeah, I think we totally covered it.
Good, because you're starting to lose. Not asleep yet.
Alrighty. All right. Yeah, I'm still getting texts about the audio video over there. All right.
It's not working.
So, no, something happened. I have no idea. So, any questions and or comments? All right. So we covered basically Adam, how God created Adam in his own image. God created man in his own image for a purpose. to be filled with the life of God, so that Adam could eat of the tree of life. We know that Adam did not. He ate of what? Naomi?
Tree of death.
The tree of death. And so that image was corrupted. It was filled, the vessel was filled, but it wasn't filled with what God wanted to be filled with. It was now filled with a condition, a state of death. So,
My title is Serpent of Man.
serpent of man?
Yeah. You know how Pharaoh had the
Mm-hmm.
serpent on his head?
Yep.
And I think it represents, like, you know how the devil led Adam and Eve to eat the fruit in the garden,
Mhm.
and it was a serpent. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I would say that kind of represents the entire, like, man basically doing the wrong thing almost.
Okay. Yeah. But I'll take it a step further. But in man's mind, man doesn't think he's doing the wrong thing. Right? Because had man thought that he was doing the wrong thing, he probably wouldn't have done it. Well, who knows? Maybe he would have. Yeah, there's people that go, yes, I know this is wrong, but I'm going to do it anyway. There you go, doing the will of first man Adam. Jaden, you had your hand up.
Choose life over death.
The what?
Choose life over death.
Choose life over death. Yeah. Now with that, does anyone remember a verse in the scriptures that say basically the same thing? With Joshua,
Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of
no, I'm thinking more of Joshua. Because
death. Well, I can.
for that with me, yeah. But specifically with Joshua, he gave them this, and then God says, choose life. And I think it was with Joshua, I could be wrong. But God says, choose life. Like God, the living God makes it so clear, and then he says, choose life. Does man choose life? Yes or no? Simon?
No.
No, of course not. We never choose Christ. We choose with a natural mind what we think is life. And what we think is life is actually death, right? So we'll probably wrap it up with that. I'm not going to put serpent of man. I may put serpent man.
Serpent man.
Maybe that'll get an extra view.
Part snake.
Part man. It's like Spider-Man. Kind of like Spider-Man with no arms or legs. All right, this is going downhill now. So, man,
Arkansas is death.
no. Man was created in the image of God. Man corrupted that image with really the image of the serpent. And God still offers life. Jesus brought that state and condition of death to death in the cross, so that whosoever will, by the Spirit of God, believe and come from that state and condition of death unto life. And not only that, but Jesus also said this, the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. I have come that they might have life and life abundantly. The abundant life is when the heart is submitted to the mind of Christ, knowing the life it's received. That's it. So that's it for that. See you in our next lesson.
Okay.